Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mistress Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 227 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. Legendary bassist Billy Sheehan returns to the show for the third time. If you missed his first two appearances, you can check the links in the show notes of this episode. Billy's on the show to talk about all things Mr. Big, releasing two final releases, the album 10 and the Big Finish live album. We also talked about his time in Nashville, his friendship with Peter Frampton, our mutual love of the Beatles, and the difference between seeing a movie and reading the book. We also talked about songwriting, his home studio, his collection of instruments, the legendary venue, the Budokan, Spinal Tap, the greatest bass lines in rock and roll, and so much more. I'm so excited that Billy is back on the show, so let me reintroduce you to Billy Sheehan. Mr. Billy Sheehan back on the show. It's nice to see you again.
It's nice to be seen again and good to see you.
Last time you and I were hanging out, we were in Nashville at the Rockin' Pod convention.
Yes.
And we were hanging out in Nashville, and since I was in Nashville, I have learned that town is so much more of a rock town than I ever gave it credit for.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of rock guys there. Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick is here. Vince Neil and Mick Mars, Billy Gibbons. I think Peter Frampton might be here. A lot of people.
Soon to be Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, Peter Frampton.
Oh, how great. I've always loved his playing, and on my phone machine greatest hits that I've had for decades, I saved famous people who left me a message. And years ago, a woman by the name of Irene Nally was the head of Atco Records. I think her husband, Al Nally, was a manager for Blackfoot. Was that the band or the? Yeah. And Irene was a wonderful woman, kind of took me under her wing a little bit because I hadn't been signed yet. And she was kind of telling me, give me some guidance. And maybe he had been looking for a bass player and contacted her, and she gave him my number. And out of nowhere, I go, hello, Billy. Oh, this is Peter Frampton. So that was a highlight of my life for sure, to hear from the man himself.
You save those voicemails when he calls.
Oh, yeah. I got a good collection.
I've taken a lot of flack, speaking of Peter Frampton, because I know what a big Beatles fan you are. We talked a lot about it the last time you were on the show. Growing up watching Sgt. Pepper's, the movie with Peter Frampton and the Bee Gees, I have heard those guys say it was one of the worst things that they ever did. And Peter Frampton said that his manager basically got him to do it because of all the cocaine. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a subjective thing, you know. Well, if you went to the store when Sgt. Pepper's came out and put your $3.99 down or $4 or whatever it was, and got that record and opened it up, and it's going to be a different experience for you if that's who you are to see the movie, as opposed to just seeing the movie and having Sgt. Pepper be some peripheral Beatles album that is. It may not, because when the record came out, that was a life-changing thing for many people. So, and also the movie can never, in a book. I remember I went to see Jaws when it came out. But I read Peter Benchley's book, Jaws, and there's 1,000 other things that go on in the story that they never touched on. Same with the William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. All kinds of other things, but you couldn't fit it in the movie. So I guess to some degree that's true with if you do a movie about a record album, you're never going to get it the way people already perceived it. So yeah, I actually never saw the movie.
It does not have a high Rotten Tomatoes score. I will put it that way. But a movie where George Burns plays God, I'm all set with. Like, I'm good with that.
Yeah, that works. That works for me too.
It's funny that you talk about movies and books because Slash was just on the show analyzing how much better The Shining book was versus the movie. And it really is, when you're a fan of a book, it's really hard to make the movie as good. I
always recommend see the movie first and then read the book. Otherwise, you're going to be, well, where's the guy with what happened to the, so all the details. There's several books like that. I remember The Stand by...
That's Stephen King too, isn't it?
Stephen King. It was his biggest book. It was about this thick. And it was an elaborate, long... And then I read a rumor that all of the movies and books that he's been doing since were just to get enough money to make an accurate theatrical version of The Stand, which turned out not to be true. I think there was a version of it at some point, and it was just awful and didn't work. So that's why that's why they give an Oscar for screenplay, because it's a tough thing to take a book or a story and make it into a movie that works. Same way. You can know every chord there is and know every word in the English language for lyrics and know every rhyme there is, but that doesn't make it a song. The songwriter is a special skill, like a screenplay. A person who does a screenplay writer, I guess. It's something that requires an interesting juggling act of balancing between how we can do it visual and audio, as opposed to a book which you are creating that movie in your mind. And when you say, the girl walked down the lane in a red dress, you have an idea what the lane looks like, how the dress looks, what she looks like. But that's all created in your mind. And so books and music are the two art forms that require the consumer or experiencer of that art to create on their own the visual story in their mind. And that's why books and music for me are, I know Schopenhauer made quite a philosophical argument that music is the greatest art form, because you must create in your mind what those sounds even mean, or even if there is a visual. In a book, at least they're describing what it looks like. And in music, there's nothing. You've got to create it all in your mind. And it forces you, well, not forces, it entices you to create this scenario. When I listen to some Debussy, like, for example, I know many of your watchers may not know, it's a classical French composer, but he had these grandiose, emotional, beautiful pieces of music. And in your mind, there's some I can't even listen to without tearing up because it's just so emotional. But in your mind, you have to create this, and it really enhances the person listening to it because you have to come up with this amazing scenario. Kind of cool.
That Oscar analogy that you were using, there's two different ones. There's original and adapted. You've done both with music. You have taken something out of the air and made a song originally. And you've also taken someone else's creative efforts and had the arduous task to try and make it your own. Which one is harder?
Well, I'd have to say, to create from scratch it can be an emotionally disturbing thing. I have known many artists say, well, look at a blank piece of paper. Now, where do I even start? Whether it's a book or a song or whatever you're writing, it can be a frightening task. To take something that's already there and modify it, it's pretty easy for anyone to do, but to do an amazing job of it is another story. To take a song and I've done a lot of production with artists and take a song, they come in, they got a song. Okay, well, all right, I see a skeleton here. Now let's take it somewhere. Let's change it. And there's a true art to that as well. But I think there are varying degrees to how successful you'll be and how good you are at it. We're starting from scratch. Undoubtedly is the more difficult of the two, I think.
I love that you're sitting there with a bass in your hands. I just talked to John 5, and he always sits there with a guitar, says that it drives every person that loves him crazy. Would you describe yourself that way too?
Yeah. When I was lived back in Buffalo, New York, in my apartment, a tiny little apartment, people knock on the door, and I come to the door with the bass on, and hey, how you doing? They go, don't you ever put that thing down? And I said, no, actually, I don't. And it's like that now too. I'm down here in my little studio, so I spent a lot of time here just working recently to keep my hands in live shape. It's a difficult task. I've been pretty successful at it this time, where in the past my hands fall apart and I got to rebuild them to start playing live again. But this time I actually came up with some new things that have helped me keep it together. But yeah, I play all the time, and I not just bass. I write a lot on guitar because it's easy to strum and sing, easier than playing bass and singing. I would say if you want me to play less, just give me a singing part. I got to hold one note, unless you're Mark King or Esperanza Spalding. Some guys are amazing at it, but I do my best.
I love being able to see people's workspaces.
Yeah,
it's something that we never would have gotten a chance to see it, but it looks cozy.
Yeah, it's great. We got my computer there with all our recording, a little acoustic treatment. There's 2 rooms of guitars. These are just the ones I use mostly when I'm recording. In the other room, there's another whole wall and then 4 racks on the ground. As the decades go by, you tend to intentionally or inadvertently gain a lot of instruments, and they're all kind of special to me, and they all have their own little thing. Even if it's 2 Yamaha basses that came from the same factory on the same day, there'll be things about them that are kind of characteristic of that individual instrument. So it's nice to be down here, and if I run out of ideas, I can go pick up another instrument and start fooling around with that and come up with something else. Doug Pinnick is a dear friend of mine. I think it's his birthday today too. I posted about it. He plays a 12-string bass. I have an 8-string bass. I have another 12-string bass, but Doug was kind enough to send me one of his. And I remember when I got it and played it, it was another world. It kind of writes songs for you. You start playing and go, hit record. Come on, I got a part here. So having a lot of instruments around and their workspaces can really help be inspirational sometimes.
Doug told me, because I had him on the show, that his workspace, he has one wall that's almost like a scrapbook, and he saves stuff from tours and then when the wall gets full, he takes it down and starts all over again.
Great.
And so it's this ever-changing wall that looks like a mess to everyone else, but it's all these memories and inspirations for him.
Yeah, I used to write down titles, song titles. No song, just a thing that sounded like a title. And as most people know, usually the title of the song is what you're singing in the chorus. Not always. But so that's why there's the most memorable line in the song is that line in the chorus. And it's usually the title of the song. So I would just write down, I had page after page after page. Some of them were just awful and would never become a song. But it kind of worked a little bit. So I see the method to his madness there. You start writing things down, and then maybe the one thing you wrote down is awful, and that other thing is awful. But when they're next to each other, somehow it makes sense, and you can extract from that a line or a chorus or a little lyric, which always helps move your song along.
You talk about your collection of instruments. Robert DeLeo told me that once an instrument gives you a song, it's near impossible to get rid of it because it gave you that gift. Do you feel that way too?
Absolutely. On the wall here is the this Fender Telecaster right here. That was the Said, yeah, I wrote all Sink Your Teeth into that, and just about everything up to the 90s. Everything I wrote was written on that guitar, Shy Boy and Sink Your Teeth in That, High Speed on Ice, all that stuff. And it came from a guy who came to a show, was down on his luck, and he had a shopping bag with a Telecaster neck and a Jazzmaster body. I don't know what happened with the Jazzmaster body, but I went to a local music store and they had a Telecaster body that had a knot hole in it. So it was only $35. It was a reject from Schecter. So that's the $35 body and the, $50 neck. And it's paid for itself.
Yeah, it's like the best $100 you ever spent.
No kidding.
What's that thing on the wall that looks like an old-fashioned painter's palette? That wooden thing that's hanging on the wall. What is that? I've never seen anything like that before.
That is like a little lyre, like a little harp kind of thing. And it has at the top, they're like piano tuners. You tune it with a wrench, and it is almost impossible to tune. But once you get it, get ready to hit record quick, because that's the only time we're going to get it in tune. So I bought it just on a lark because I wanted to find out about those piano tuners, because I wanted to make something that utilized those for extra strings. I haven't followed through as yet, but I do see now how they are tricky to start with. So my idea may not come to full fruition there, but just to get an idea of how you would work those piano tuners. It's funny. Yeah, there's always some oddball thing around that inspires me. I bought an occasional like a violin bow, and then they came out with this little violin bow that is double-sided, so you can use it on a guitar. And there's always something going on. I'm a little bit of an inventor and tinkerer and home handyman, so I always working on things like that.
You're an incredibly musical person, but is there an instrument that eludes you? Something you tried and your brain just doesn't work that way?
Oddly, I've been pretty lucky. While in high school, I played in a horn band, 11-piece, trombone, tenor, and alto sax and trumpet. The hot guys in town too, and I was just a kid. And we played Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Also, the horn band, that was a big thing at that time, about 71. And I could get a tone out of everything. As a matter of fact, we did for our switcheroo at the end of the show with Mr. Big in Japan one time, where we all changed instruments. I forgot what I was playing guitar at first, and then I switched off and I came out. We were doing Brown Sugar by the Stones, and I got a sax from Yamaha. I actually could play that. This solo is pretty simple, but I managed to pull it off, except for one note at the top. I didn't know where that was on the sax. So I could never, I don't know where that note is. So I couldn't hit that note. I think the last show I finally in the dressing room, that's why I got a dressing room to myself all the time. I start practicing sax. I got a lot of privacy. So, what's this thing here? There's a note. So, I finally got it for the very last show. So, and trumpet, I've always been able to, I always have the embouchure, what your lips do when you play a particular wind instrument for trumpet, because the guy who started me playing bass, his name was Joe Hesse, great bass player, lived right around the corner, but he did this thing, and you could do a little wow. And I could always do a trumpet. I can only go not very high notes, and you see the veins popping out eventually as I do it.
Well, you're doing it with your hand.
It's the hand trumpet, I guess. I don't know. But so we always would fool around with this. So when I pick up a trombone or a trumpet, I could actually get a sound out of it, and most trumpet players, people just blow into a trumpet. They don't realize you got to do that little thing in there to make it happen. And a flute too. Actually, a buddy of mine had a flute. The sax, clarinet, and flute are, I'll get in trouble if I say they're the same, but they're very similar, the fingering on how that works. So if you know one, you might be able to fake your way through on another one. So, and piano, I can fake it a little bit of a violin bow thing, and accordion escapes me though. I don't know how they do it.
I'm sure you've met Weird Al at one point or another. You could call him up and he could help you.
But I do have a practice chanter for bagpipes. That's the part that you play without the bag, so you can just get an idea what notes you're going to play. Then you get the full thing, which is the bag and all the other drone horns. I haven't gone that far yet, so I'm sure my wife will probably make me get an apartment somewhere if I come home with a bagpipe.
There are certain instruments that the learning curve is painful. I think drums, just because of the racket, the violin, and I think the bagpipes, when it's bad, it's bad.
When it's bad. When it's good, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But even someone that's good, it's okay.
You talk about Mr. Big, obviously, and a lot of artists don't get the chance to kind of put something to bed, to say goodbye the way that you wanted to. I mean, obviously, we all saw the press release from Aerosmith, and they didn't want to retire from touring, and Steven's voice is injured, and they just can't do it. But for Mr. Big, you guys were able to kind of do it the way that you wanted to do it.
Very fortunate, if I may interject there. We toured with Aerosmith on the Get a Grip tour, did a European tour with them, and they were so great to us and such wonderful people. Every night, Steven went out and nailed it. It was just great. They were in their prime, and we'd watch them every night. They were just fantastic.
It's almost impossible to believe that his voice did what it did for as long as it did.
True. Yeah, we see guys like, another genre, Tony Bennett was singing into his 80s, but he's not up there screaming, like he's not screaming, he's just singing. And there is a way, I know I've been very lucky to have worked with some vocal coaches, and you can, I remember the first time I sat down with this one amazing guy, Ron Anderson. When Bono blows his voice out and U2, they fly Ron Anderson in to fix him. I mean, he is the man. He's on everybody. And he sat down on his piano, go, just so you know, da 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 up the pitch. And we got to the top, and he goes, "Mister, you're working way too hard. Let me show how it's done." And he figured out, he had this incredible, unique ability to kind of look at you and know what's going on in the invisible realm of your vocal cords. And came up with has a whole bunch of exercises to move things around in the right spot. And my range went up almost 2 steps, which is unheard of for an older person as well. And I never blow my voice out now, never. I can go for show after show after show and not blow my voice out. So there is a way to do it. And there is, a lot of guys just don't practice that at all. Or they start out wrong and it's hard to break a habit. So anyway, I digressed far enough though. But your original question about with Mr. Big, yeah, we're very grateful to be able to still sing and play, but some of it's on the edge a little bit. So we wanted to run over the finish line as opposed to crawl over the finish line. And I think, and it's a real farewell tour. So that we're not going to go out again and do another tour. The possibility we were asked in a couple of other news, what if there's some kind of charity thing, or we could do a little, do something by showing up at the same place. I don't even know if we would play or not. Yeah, we'll do what we can to help people out in situation, but we won't record or tour again. But I think sometimes it's good to put a little period at the end of the sentence. The end. Thank you very much. Enjoy, and all the records are there, and 1,000 iPhones were recording everything we did in the last tour. So and we just had amazing fans fly in from all over the place. In Europe, they were flying in from Korea and South America and Japan and China, all over the USA. And when we played in those areas, people from the USA and Europe were flying there. So we have an incredible group of people that have supported this band that we are forever grateful. So, and I always say to people, everything I own, everything I have comes from somebody buying a ticket, a t-shirt, or a record or download or whatever. And I never forget that. And they have gone above and beyond just patronizing our products. They have spent time, effort, money, energy to fly and get hotels and figure out how to get a ticket in Bulgaria, and they did. It was just amazing. So we have, and we know most of them too, because we recognize them in the front row, and we used to do an after show thing and say hello to everybody. And there were some dear, amazing friends we've made over the years that were there, especially for this farewell tour. So it was a beautiful thing.
You did it with a couple of massive releases, obviously. 10 came out over the summer, and now the big finish out September 6th.
Yeah, that's a Budokan show, I believe. And we got photos from that were just amazing. Just the whole place lit up with the phones and the whole place singing along. We have a very fortunate, and we're so thankful for the relationship we have with our friends in Japan. I don't even call them fans. They're really our friends, and they've been there with us from the very beginning. They were the first to really adapt to Mr. Big and support us. And people make a cliche about Big in Japan, but it means so much, and they're just so great. And the venues we play are just amazing, and they're all sold out all the time. And we have great relationship. I remember we stayed at one particular hotel in Osaka, and outside there were like hundreds of fans. So I walked out by myself, and I just said, "Okay, I'll sign and take photos." And they made their own line. They all got in line. Amazing. Everywhere else would be total chaos, and you would have to go inside and get somebody to come out with you to organize it. So I signed everything. And hello, how are you? Good to see you. I remember you. And took photos of everybody. And then there was a little restaurant across the street that was smaller than this room. And they served this amazing kind of Kobe beef cooked on a little charcoal cooker that you bring to your table. And so the owner came out, and he was a fan. Could he take a picture? Oh, yeah. Do you have a table? I go, oh, yeah. So I went in, and it holds about 10 people. And we had about 75 people in there, all drinking and hanging and taking photos. And it was one of the most glorious nights. It was just me alone with all the fans hanging. No worry about security or any nonsense like that. And it was just incredible. So our experience in Japan is life-changing. I mean, I grew up, after World War II. My dad was, the adults that I grew up with were all a part of World War II, and we, all we knew of the people in Japan or people in Germany wasn't necessarily a positive thing. So to go there and experience the most incredible hospitality and kindness and sweetness and sincere love and admiration really lets you know that, when there is a war or a thing, it's a small percentage of idiots that are pulling that stuff off. People in general are pretty darn good, and unfortunately sometimes historically things get caught up and screwed up, but in the end, people really do have a great heart. And my affection for Germany and Japan, growing up with the second generation after World War II, my affection for both those countries is very, very, very high. And my respect for them is really wonderful. And it's over, which is great. And now we can all move on together and have a beautiful relationship. And it's epitomized by what we've had in Japan.
Gary Sharon told me this really funny story when we were talking about crowds in Japan, that Extreme did sound check, and he asked, because he likes to sing barefoot, if they could get a rug for him in front of his mic stand. And they left and came back, and they had meticulously marked everything on the stage, drums, amps, everything, carpeted the whole stage and put everything back the way that it was. And he was just looking for like an area rug from somewhere. And he said that's
how it works.
That's how it works.
It is amazing. Yeah. I asked I used to chew gum to keep my mouth moist for my throat on stage. I've since gotten rid of that disgusting habit. And but I remember saying, can I get like some gum? And they had a tray with every kind of gum you can imagine, like 50 different kinds of gum laid out like an artistic thing in the packages. So come on, it was just so amazing. Incredible. So I urge people. And Japan is safe and easy, and English is easy to find, and the translators on the iPhone now are unbelievable. They work. My wife's Italian, and I tried the older translators, and she'd look at it and she'd go, "That's not really what you said." So I tried the new version, and she goes, "Man, that's that's exactly what you said. And then I'd try to fool it by saying nonsense, and it would come through. And so I urge everyone, if you have the opportunity to experience Japan, it's quite amazing.
And when it comes to traveling, musicians are some of the best traveled people in the world. Is Japan the best food? Where is the best food that you've ever been?
Well, my food tastes are it's a broad spectrum, so it's hard to pick a best. But as far as the way it's served, the way it's presented, the care in which it's made, and the quality of the components, Japan is pretty tough to beat. I mean, we went, to get a Kobe beef. What's this Kobe beef place? I think they were there on Thanksgiving or something. They don't have turkey, so we went to a Kobe beef place, and they had a glass display case that was refrigerated that they had the giant chunks of Kobe beef in prior to taking it back and cutting it up and serving it. And I remember I asked the waitress, how much would it cost for that piece? And so she came back with a paper all written out. It was about $7,000 chunk of Kobe beef. It's unbelievable. And there's so many. I remember being in a bar and asking for some whiskey with ice, and the bartender, he had blocks of clear ice, crystal clear, chiseled a sphere out of the clear ice that fit perfectly in the glass, so that when he poured the whiskey over it, come on, it was just, you see so much of that. And it's expensive to some degree, but you get what you pay for, and you can also eat cheap there too. There's little noodle houses and little places. We went, a dear friend of ours is a translator and a guitar player too. I played on a couple tracks for her, and she met me and my wife and took us to a real noodle house. There wasn't a letter of English anywhere in the whole place. And she ordered for us, and we got these bowls of noodles, the soba noodles with the I think it was veal or chicken floating on top, and crisp, perfect vegetable. Oh man, it was just
sounds like heaven.
Perfect, absolutely perfect. And there, you can't find litter. The giant train station, as big as 5 football fields, tens of thousands of people all over the place. You can't find a scrap of litter anywhere. Amazing. And I wish America would take a cue for that, because it does bother me that we're in a little bit of a bind right now with how things are going here. But just an amazing experience.
There have been so many iconic live albums recorded at the Budokan. I mean, even someone that's never been to Japan, I obviously know what the Budokan is. What is it about that building?
Well, it's in a judo arena, so the seats up the sides are very steep, so everybody could see the sumo or judo thing easier. So its sightlines are really great, so you're really close to everybody. I know the Beatles, there was a bootleg of it. I don't know if it ever came out officially, but it was called 5 Nights in a Judo Arena. And that was their 5 nights at Budokan when they played there. I have it in my iTunes bootleg section, which is quite extensive. Again, because in Japan they had these bootleg stores you could go to, because they were bootlegging your live shows. They'd let you take anything you want. So we would walk out of there with, the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway demos, the rehearsals for Band of Gypsies by Jimi Hendrix, all these unbelievable things we got there. So anyway, back to the Budokan, it just became iconic in that respect, that when bands played, I think the Beatles really made it iconic. I don't know if they had music prior to the Beatles. It may have just been for judo, but they knew it was so big, they kind of had to. And they did their 5 nights there. And then, of course, Cheap Trick. And the Deep Purple, I'm not sure where they recorded live in Japan. Some of it had to have been at the Budokan, maybe or maybe not. But that was 5 shows. And at the bootleg shop, I got all 5 shows. They distilled down into the one, their live album. And there's some amazing stuff they didn't use from the other shows. So again, more Japan amazingness.
I'm going to add you to the really long list of artists that I've had on the show that were raised by veterans. It's a disproportionate number of successful musicians were raised by veterans of whatever era it was. Do you think that part of your success can be attributed to growing up in a house with a veteran? Is there a correlation? Because there are so many examples to list.
I believe there is. And I've never even heard that before, but I think your summary of it instantly had to be answered yes. There was a call to duty that existed in America in World War II, where young men would lie about their age so they could enlist. And then they'd be on the beaches of Normandy when that front of that boat came down. I read a book recently about the German point of view of D-Day. And they were all up in the hills and behind the bunkers. And they would unload this one particular machine gun into crowds of our troops and just mow them down like the front lawn. And the water was as red as blood. And it fucked up the Germans because they kept coming. They didn't get it. These guys, they thought for sure they would have turned around and left. They kept coming. And they thought, wow, these guys are determined. That spirit that I hope we get back someday. It still does exist in many people, but that spirit of just get the job done, get in there. Don't let any obstacle be an obstacle. My dad was a good mechanical guy. My big brother, as a result, was too. We just where there's a will, there's a way, and when most players from my generation. There was no tablature or YouTube or anything. You had the record and the needle, and you put it on there, and it's on here somewhere. Figure it out, go for it. There's no help. And I think a little bit of that spirit of it can be done, and you got to figure it out on your own. And I think that can easily come from a household that is headed by someone who was a veteran of World War II or of some type of conflict which required them to dig deep and make a sacrifice and charge forward.
Now that Mr. Big is kind of putting the period on the end of the sentence and Portnoy's back in Dream Theater, Winery Dogs, you always have 10,000 things going on. So what are some of the other things that you're working on now that Mr. Big is kind of finished your mission and obviously the Winery Dogs are paused right now?
Yeah, I record a lot here at home. We have right now, I've got 10 tracks ready to go through and record. My engineer's, I think he's upstairs now. I heard him come in. Myself and Ray Lugier from Korn and our friend Scott, we have a little production team. He's the engineer, and we've played a lot of records together and things like that. So during the pandemic, when I couldn't tour, I did 400 or 500. At one point, I thought it was about 600 tracks for clients around the world. So there's always a lot to do. Now, but that helps keep my hands in shape, keeps my ears sharp. I got to think on my feet to play to some of these tracks that are every style you could imagine, from electronic dance music to country and western to jazz to death metal to everything, and come up with a thing. As we were speaking earlier about the veteran household, they got to just figure it out. go figure out what path to take. So, and I'm talking to a bunch of other musician friends of mine of various levels of fame and ability, and probably put something together pretty soon, just to go out and tour. I live to play live, and I play live to live, so I can't sit around on my ass too long. So I'll be out touring ASAP. I'm not sure exactly. There's about 4 or 5 choices at this point for things to do, aside from recording here. And also I did buy a 50-pound bag of peanuts, and the chipmunks are very happy about that, so I'll be taking very good care of them.
There is a new Spinal Tap movie in production that we're going to get in the new year. And I have to ask you, because you've played thousands of shows with so many different artists, is there a Spinal Tap moment that sticks out for you on stage? Something went totally wrong, a tour date where just the world imploded. Does one stick out for you?
Well, I toured with UFO in 1983 in a European tour. I replaced Pete Way. And I came home, I went to see the movie Spinal Tap. And I remember sitting there and going, this isn't funny. Guys had just lived that. Now I love UFO. They were great guys, but it was kind of the end of an era for them. And we were in Greece, in Athens, Greece. And Phil was a little under the weather. And people started getting pissed off because he was kind of staggering, and the mic was down here. He wasn't singing. I was trying to sing to cover him as best I could, would croak out my vocals to make up for it. And a firecracker, a big, like an M80 went off. And that kind of threw Phil off even more. So he was a little bit dazed. So I went back by my amp. I don't want to get hit. And so I'm back there minding my own business. And Phil staggers over to me and he goes, Billy, I think if you come to the front of the stage with me, I think we can get them. So I thought, well, okay. So I go up with Phil and I'm at the front of the stage. All of a sudden, bow, right in my face.
Oh.
I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a firecracker, but I didn't stop playing. I kept playing. And the crew guys were over the side of the stage and come on. And I went over there. And while the band is still playing, I literally, and I knew something hit me. I go, am I bleeding? And they looked at each other and they go, should we tell them? And it turns out somebody took like this, they had these stainless steel beer cans that when crushed down to the size of a hockey puck was a weapon. I mean, it weighed about, half a pound. Somebody had thrown, it wasn't a fireworker, somebody had thrown it towards the stage and it hit me right in the head. And I just, that was a Spinal Tap moment to some degree. And that didn't match up with anything in the movie, but it was a difficult, one of the most painful things I've ever experienced on stage. But I didn't stop playing, so I kept going.
I got to ask you this question before I let you go. I saw this list on Consequence of the greatest bass lines in music. And I'll give you the top 5, but I want to know what yours is. According to this article, it said the Talking Heads' Psycho Killer, Thank You from Sly and the Family Stone, Jane's Addiction's Mountain Song, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, and Come Together from the Beatles was number 1. Do you have a song that has the best bass line in your opinion?
Lost Woman by the Yardbirds was amazing. Really cool. Paul Samwell-Smith on bass. Pretty amazing. Almost anything McCartney did is just brilliant.
You and I have a very shared love of the Beatles that we talked about last time you were on the show. How can you not?
And the people, some people don't get it. I think if I give me enough time, I'll get them to get it. Because sometimes I've been lucky to sit down with somebody and they would explain a piece of music to me, and then I'd hear it and I go, oh, I get it now. A buddy of mine sat me down. Okay, this is Stravinsky and it's called The Rite of Spring. And this was so controversial, there were riots on the streets of Paris when it debuted. I said, wow, I got it. And then, oh, I get it now. If I would have just heard it, I thought, I don't know, some classical music I don't like. So sometimes you need to explain. And I would be happy to explain to anyone why Paul McCartney is probably the greatest, really, just a really great player. James Jamerson, of course, anything by the Temptations or any Motown that he played on, very similar. The bass was all over the place. McCartney's bass is all over the place, but it's so musical and woven in so well with what's going on with every other component of the song and the music. It's quite amazing. Very lucky. I don't know if I've told this story in public, but a friend of mine worked with. I hesitate to say it because I don't want to blow his cover, but AC/DC bass player. Is that Cliff Williams? Yeah, I mixed him up with his brother for a minute. And a buddy of mine went to do some business with him. He was getting rid of some old gear, and I don't know any of the AC/DC guys, and I'm the biggest AC/DC fan of all time. I love that band with every cell of my heart. And he came back to Nashville. He goes, Bill, are you home? I go, yeah. I go, what's going on? I go, I got to come over. Oh, okay. So he comes over and he brings a case. And I go, what's that? He goes, open it up. It's a Hofner 1973 Beatle bass. And he said, Cliff wanted you to have it. I had tears in my eyes. Just amazing. And apparently he knew that I was a big Beatles fan. I didn't even know he knew who I was. So, but it's one of my most valued treasures ever to get a gift from that man who was just, and he has a bass player too. Man, what a great player. AC/DC, the sound of those records and his bass playing on it, just so amazing. But you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was completely had tears in my eyes.
How do you write a thank you note for a gift like that?
Dave was kind enough to give me his number, so I thank him in person. And what a wonderful guy, and what an incredible player. And wow, just I was completely blown away. Just one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. And I'm still, as I mentioned, and I still float up to the moon. Just the idea of it. So and the thing is just perfect. And so playing McCartney on that is just so enriching and so cool. And I will sit down with that bass, I think on my next birthday, and have a bottle of wine and put Sgt. Pepper's on and play the whole thing on that bass. It'll be so great.
Well, congratulations on finishing Mr. Big and kind of closing that chapter of your life and doing it exactly the way that you guys wanted to do it.
Thank you, and very kind of you to put it in that respect. We're so thankful, so grateful to so many people, everybody that bought a ticket, a T-shirt, or a recording, and also everyone in the press like yourself that have been kind enough to do interviews and speak kindly of us. It's been really an amazing journey, and we are just so pleased that people have enjoyed it.
It's been so good to see you again. Congratulations.
Great to see you again, too. I think I'm going to be at the new pod thing coming up. What it comes in September?
Yeah, I think it's going to be in the fall. Yeah, they're starting it back up again. I think they needed to move it because it wasn't a big enough venue for them. They didn't realize it was going to be as successful. So hopefully I'll see you because I love Nashville. So. I didn't know I was going to love it as much as I do.
Oh, it was wonderful. So, yeah, there's not a lot of public. But in a way, that's kind of good because you get between the podcasters and the artists, you can get really great conversations and insight into what's going on. I think that's a cool thing. They should probably have a public day, though.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do all your business and then have a public day. Well, we'll see.
We're all music nerds at the end of the day.
Here we are.
Yeah. See you later.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye. There he is, bass-playing legend Billy Sheehan. If you missed his first two appearances on the Mistress Carrie podcast, you can check the links in the show notes of this episode. In those links, you'll also find this episode's corresponding playlist. I make a playlist for every episode of the Mistress Carrie podcast that features all of my guest music and all the artists and songs that we talked about in the interview. You'll also find all of Billy's links, all the Mr. Big links, and of course, all the Mistress Carrie links. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday, plus every weekday you get the Sit Rep. The Situation Report gives you all of your rock news, music headlines, and entertainment updates in about 5 minutes. And you never know when we're going to release a bonus episode. You can join me live every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern on my official Facebook and Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube channel for my weekly streaming video show, Cocktails in the War Room. And you can always find me on the radio. Get the details on all of that and more at mistresscarrie.com. The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.